she's grinning as she's jailed for a 20-year campaign of abuse against her husband, which saw her beat him and force him to clean up her feces. Nasty.
Yo, what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another video. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking. All right. So the not so real estate of the suburbs just never decreases. But you know what else doesn't decrease? The crime. Like this particular one here, where an Ohio woman says that she wasn't in the right state of mind when she fatally stabbed elderly neighbors during a robbery. So I'm curious as to which part of it does she feel that she wasn't in her right state of mind in? Was she in her right state of mind during the robbery or while she was stabbing the individuals? An Ohio woman was sentenced to serve anywhere from 37 years to life in prison in connection with the brutal slaying of her elderly neighbors during a robbery over 2 years ago. All right. Judge Michael Holbrook sentenced Kelly Dale Vokus, who is 43 years old, to the maximum penalty possible in the case. According to the Columbus Dispatch, which we'll be looking at later, Vokus pleaded guilty in December to a murder, involuntary manslaughter, and aggravated burglary. During the defendant's sentencing hearing, a sheriff deputy testified that authorities received a 911 hang-up call around 3:20 p.m. on October 18th of 2020 and responded to the Prairie Township home of the two victims, John Blank, who was 77, and Susan Castor, who was 75. At the residence, the deputy said he saw Vokus through a window, putting items including a checkbook, ID cards, and a bag of coins in her purse before attempting to flee the property. Inside the home, Blank was found in the bathroom with 6 stab wounds to his head and neck, while Castor was in the basement bound in a rope and also suffering stab wounds. At her sentencing, a crying Vokus said she wasn't in her right state of mind and apologized. "I did not react in the manner in which I should have," she said. Her defense lawyer claimed the client battled drug abuse and mental health issues, of course, at the time of the murders, according to the Dispatch. How can a human being be so cruel and take such evil actions towards an elderly couple that at many times had showed you kindness? Blank's daughter, Julie Blank, asked Vokus at the hearing. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at the Columbus Dispatch to see if we can get some more details on what this psychopath did. All right. So now here is the article from the Columbus Dispatch. I'm going to bring it up on the screen right now. And if you guys haven't smashed that like button, please make sure you guys smash the like button. Also, don't forget to watch the video all the way through to the end because it will take you to either the next video or the next live stream. Woman gets life for killing, robbing elderly couple in Prairie Township. All right. And that's her right there. She's not looking very happy. As a matter of fact, what she's looking like is like Madonna tried out for a part on Orange is the New Black. All right. John Blank and Susan Castor trusted their former neighbor in Prairie Township and showed her kindness and generosity, the elderly couple's children said Friday in a Franklin County Common Plea Court. Kelly Dale Vokus, who is 43, betrayed that trust, they said, robbing and then killing the couple by stabbing the 77-year-old Blank and strangling the 75-year-old Castor at their home on October 18th of 2020. There was no forced entry, Franklin County prosecutor said Friday in court, indicating that the victims allowed their killer inside. Within minutes, they would try to call 911. Vocus pleaded guilty in December to murder, involuntary manslaughter, and aggravated burglary in connection with the double homicide. Franklin County prosecutors dropped her other charges, including 2 aggravated murder charges. Now, isn't it interesting how these people commit these crazy, heinous crimes and somehow something is always dropped? Franklin County Common Pleas Court Judge Michael Holbrook sentenced Vocus on Friday to life in prison with the opportunity for parole after 37 years, the maximum possible sentence for the charges in her conviction. Vocus has over 2 years of jail time credit, but will not have a chance to get out of prison until she is at least 78 years old, near the age of her victims, as the couple's children had asked. Vocus, who cried throughout the sentencing hearing Friday, apologized to the victim's family. "I did not react in the manner in which I should have," Vocus said. "I was not in my right state of mind, and I do apologize." So by her saying that she wasn't in her right state of mind, if you ask me, that totally negates the apology, because you're still not taking responsibility for the actions that you chose to do. Nobody put a gun to your head and made you delete those 2 elderly people, but what you did was you put a rope around one of them's head and you put a knife through the other one's head and you deleted them by your own choice. Francisco Lutz, Vodka's defense attorney, said Vocus had a difficult childhood full of abuse. At the time of the crime, he said she was dealing with mental health issues and using drugs, and that doesn't make her innocent. Lutz asked Holbrook to give Vocus a glimmer of hope and acknowledge she is unlikely to get out the first time she goes before the parole board. Holbrook, however, said this is one of the worst cases he'd seen. Near the end of the sentencing, when Holbrook asked Vocus if she understood she would have to register as a violent offender if she gets out of prison, she responded, "If I'm alive, yes." Holbrook took offense to the response, saying it was disrespectful and Vocus was acting as if she were the victim. Well, of course. At about 3:20 p.m. on October 18th of 2020, Franklin County Sheriff's deputies responded to a 911 hang-up call at a home on the 200 block of Carilla Lane in Lincoln Village subdivision in Prairie Township. A Franklin County Sheriff's deputy testified at the hearing Friday to the gruesome scene he and fellow officers came upon. Through the window, deputies saw Vocus shoving items into her purse. Deputies ordered her to go to the door, but she attempted to flee out of the back door, where a deputy apprehended her. In her purse were Blank and Castor's IDs, Castor's checkbook, and a bag of coins. Deputies then entered the home and found Blank unresponsive in the first floor bathroom with a total of 6 stab wounds to his head and neck. In the basement, deputies found Castor unresponsive with stab wounds and a rope tied around her head, neck, and body. Franklin County Assistant Prosecutor Jack Wong said the sentencing hearing Friday that prosecutors were asking for the maximum sentence due to the brutality of the way these 2 individuals died. Several of Blank and Castor's children spoke reverently at the sentencing hearing Friday about their parents, who had been together for over 2 decades. Blank served his country in the U.S. Navy. Castor was known across Ohio as A-OK Lady, who wore a cape and gave out smiley faces. Julie Blank and John Blank's daughter said that the couple was an inspiration who truly lived their lives helping others. How can a human being be so cruel and take such evil actions toward an elderly couple that at many times had showed you kindness, Julie Blank said through tears. Very, very sad, but not to be not expected when you're trying to survive the suburbs. And this judge in this case is definitely, at least it seems like, he's trying to make the suburbs a little bit more habitable by giving this woman the maximum sentence. But you can never guarantee it, and you never know, because in this case, they also dropped a bunch of charges. All right. If I'm not mistaken, they dropped 2 of the murder charges that she had. So, I mean, still, what we have here is another individual. All right. But this person is a prison reform boss, a woman, and she's grinning as she's jailed for a 20-year campaign of abuse against her husband, which saw her beat him and force him to clean up her feces. Nasty. Nasty. We have another Amber Turd on our hands. This woman's name is Cherie Spencer, and she's 45, and she was jailed for abusing her husband, Richard Spencer, ironically. Mother of 3, gave daily beatings that left him cowering in a fetal position. I'm not surprised that somebody named Richard Spencer would be such a cuck. An abusive wife and prison boss who beat her husband every day while calling him the P word and made him clean up her own feces during a horrific 2-decade campaign of terror, grinned in the dock as she was jailed for 4 years. Mother of 3, Cherie Spencer, who is 45, was sentenced at Hall Crown Court for making her husband Richard's life a living hell with daily beatings and verbal attacks that left him cowering on the floor in a fetal position. Now, you're talking about a masculine woman. How come this woman hasn't been any manosphere content when it comes to masculinity and modern women? On one occasion, she defecated on the floor and then forced him to clean it up. And on another, she beat him with a wine bottle so hard it permanently disfigured his ear. The assaults included kicking, punching, hitting, biting, and spitting at him. She also damaged his laptops, phones, and clothes. And shout out to my man Kid Gravity, because this is just more proof that even the laptops have a difficult time surviving the suburbs. Jailing Spencer for 4 years, Judge Kate Rayfield told her that the abuse of Richard Spencer was the worst case of controlling and coercive behavior that I've ever seen. As well as prison terms, she was given an indefinite restraining order against her victim, but still grinned as she left the dock to be taken down to the cells. She worked at the highest levels for HM Prison and Probation Service and bragged to friends that she had the ear of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. It was described as great irony that Spencer had done so much work aimed at investigating the effects of custodial sentences on the family. In furious, wine-fueled tirades, she would call him dum-dum and caused bruises and scratches that he would need to cover with makeup before going outside. So this dude had battered husband syndrome. Only in the suburbs do people have battered husband syndrome. For years, he secretly recorded video and audio of his wife's attacks on him, and when police became involved, he handed over 43 images of his bruised face, taken on different dates following savage assaults that he'd suffered. Mr. Spencer would email them to himself and then delete them from his phone, so his wife didn't realize he was recording her violent assaults. Hall Crown Court heard that Spencer was a mother of 3 young children and that many of the attacks on her husband had occurred in the family home. Spencer of upmarket Bubwith, East Yorkshire, was a project manager in the departments of strategy and performance. A former friend said she would brag about being only 2 down from the prime minister in her field and had meetings with Boris Johnson, who she spoke of as though he were a friend. She was bragging about her high-flying career while subjecting her poor husband, a lovely man, to daily abuse, degradation, and humiliation. Okay. So now here it says within months of becoming a couple in 2000, Richard Spencer endured her violent rages, which happened whether she was drunk or sober. Mr. Spencer told the court that although he was bigger and physically stronger than his petite wife, he did not fight back when she began to attack him. He said he became almost immune to the physical abuse she meted out, even though she would cause him immense pain by sinking her teeth into him. But he said the mental scars left by 16 years of her hate-filled attacks were that would leave him the most lasting effect. Spencer's reign of domestic terror finally ended in June of 2021 when the police were called to their family home by a concerned welfare worker. Her arrest that day on suspicion of assaulting her husband opened a door into the hell he'd kept private for his entire married life. He stood before the court today and at one point struggled to choke back tears as he described his nightmare marriage in a personal statement. Mr. Spencer said, from September 2000 to June 2021, Cherie subjected me to hundreds of physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive episodes perpetrated in a pattern of behavior going back over 20 years, almost half my life. Now, what's interesting about this is that during cases like this, in order to downplay the degeneracy of it, the population at large will take a story like this and turn it into a Lifetime movie and replace these characters with respected actors in order to water down the severity of the crime. You see this happen all the time. I have become resigned to the fact that I will never fully recover from her abuse and that it will have a permanent damaging impact on mine and my family's life. Cherie's abuse towards me evolved and escalated over time. She used repeated acts of physical assault, threats, verbal abuse, and humiliation to punish and exercise control over me. The abuse was hidden from the outside world, including friends and family. Cherie manipulated me into believing that I was responsible and a willing participant in the abuse. She remorsefully proclaimed that I deserved to be punished and that it was a justifiable consequence of me disappointing her in some way. Little by little, I lost my independence and willpower and just accepted that was how my life was going to be. I complied with Cherie's demands, and she controlled most aspects of my everyday life, including things like what activities I could participate in, which room I could sleep in, and even which toilet I could use. Well, apparently, she was using the floor as the toilet, and you had to clean it up. Gradually, I became isolated from my family and friends and was left in deep debt, causing me to feel trapped. Mr. Spencer said that restraining his wife was his only hope of avoiding serious injury, but the act of holding her still provoked her wrath. He told the court, I became increasingly hardened to the physical attacks that were usually inflicted when Cherie had been drinking alcohol, such as the kicking, the punching, and although some things were particularly painful, such as the biting and the nipping, and I have no idea what the hell nipping is. I'm physically bigger and stronger than Cherie, so I could restrain her if the pain became unbearable. However, I could only hold her for so long, and when the time came to let go, she would be even angrier, and the injuries she would inflict afterwards were always worse. She's a psychopath. After a while, I learned to cover my face with my hands and curl up into a fetal position to try to avoid sustaining any visible facial injuries so that I could still take the children to the school and the nursery. The worst of the assaults on him happened in April of 2021 when his wife attacked him with an empty wine bottle. The court heard that Spencer beat him with the bottle all over his head and body, but caused a serious injury to his ear, which swelled dramatically. Mr. Spencer said he needed hospital treatment, which his wife responded to by calling him the P word. He looked up YouTube videos on how to drain blood from the ear by puncturing it with a knife. When he refused, she told him that if he used his name at the hospital, she would stop him from coming back to the family home. She ordered him to use her brother's name, and he did as he was told, as he was booked into A&E, fearing the reprisals that would happen if he did not. Richard Pratt, KC, defending, said that there was little he could say to mitigate against Spencer's appalling treatment of her husband and described her professional accomplishments as ironic. He said it was almost impossible to recognize her professional person as the same woman who subjected her husband to the shocking and distressing attacks. Mr. Pratt said, it is perhaps particularly ironic that one of the projects she had been working on has been dealing with the effects of custodial sentences on the family. That is an irony, but what is important and significant is that she continued to work and has an excellent reputation and record. He said that Spencer had suffered bouts of depression and anxiety throughout her life, which she had wrongly sought to self-mitigate by drinking alcohol. The court was told that on some days she would drink as much as 3 bottles of wine. Judge Rayfield described how she had sat through 2 hours of video and audio recordings of Spencer hurling hateful abuse towards her husband. She added, in one of those recordings, it is clear that you had defecated on the floor. Your husband can be heard scrubbing while you are heard saying to him, I made you do that. All I asked you to do was go to the store and shop. I watched as you spat in his face time and time again, called him the B word, tiny C word, and skank, and insulted members of his family. You whispered in his face in the most sinister way, shouted demands at him, get the effing chicken on, go to the effing shop, and warning him, you will learn. By your actions, you intended to humiliate or degrade Richard, and you have caused him significant psychological harm. Richard Spencer was a vulnerable victim, isolated from his family and trapped financially. Spencer admitted coercive controlling behavior and 3 counts of assault, occasioning actual body harm. The charges could only cover a 5-year period, dating from the time the law on controlling and coercive behavior was passed in late 2015. But Judge Rayfield said she took into account Spencer's persistent behaviors toward her husband because it casts light on his vulnerability as her victim. And one of the reasons why her husband probably didn't ever do anything before this is because if you are getting abused like this by a woman, the court doesn't have any holler for you, and the police will just make fun of you and laugh. And this is in the UK where this case took place. So next we travel back to the United States, all right? Because as you guys can see in the suburbs of the UK, what might end up happening to you is that you might end up having a woman crap on the floor and she spit in your face and try to make you clean it up. And you don't want to deal with that. You can just ask Johnny Depp. You know what I'm saying? So now we're going to Texas, all right? And what ended up happening in Texas is that a mom was accused of hitting her 2-month-old daughter in the head, and that hit to the head deleted the poor 2-month-old. A 19-year-old mother was charged with murder 1 week after her 2-month-old girl was found dead in a Texas home, authorities said. Around 6:30 p.m. on February 21st, officers responded to a residence in Amarillo about the baby who had stopped breathing, the Amarillo Police Department said. The infant, later identified as Eva Celine Diaz by KVII, was pronounced dead when responders first arrived, and the Amarillo Police Department Homicide Unit was called in to investigate. Detectives found evidence that showed the mother, Ashley K. Harper, was involved in the child's injuries, and she was placed under arrest, the police said. A week later, those charges were upgraded to murder. During questioning, Harper allegedly confessed to hitting the baby in the head with her hand. She was booked into the Potter County Detention Center and remains there on a bond of $750,000. An obituary for the baby states the victim was an incredibly energetic and happy baby who loved her parents. And unfortunately, it was one of her parents who ended her young life. So, this is what you have to deal with if you're one of those unfortunate individuals out there that's trying to survive the suburbs. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think about these stories. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice, smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers. Make sure that you subscribe to my backup channels by hitting them when they come up at the end of the video, and I will catch you all on the next one. All right, peace.